get the meeting called to order. Roll call, Mr. Kaminsky.
Present.
Mr. Kunkel.
Here.
Mr. Thomas.
Here.
Mr. Seiger.
Here.
Mr. Scala.
Present.
Mr. Bergen.
Here.
All accounted for. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
I'll move.
Mr. Scala, Mr. Kaminsky seconds. Any changes, anybody? All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Public comment, do we have any? Okay, member comments, anyone? All right, let's move down to the routine consent agenda. Are there any items anyone would like to pull?
5-1, please.
That's it?
I'm amending a word. Yeah, I guess. We got a long meeting, so I'm not gonna.
Matt?
5-2, 5-3, and 5-10.
2, 3, 10. Okay, anybody else?
Scott, is 5-5 and 5-6 kind of like similar between the two? For
Same.
what you're doing?
Well, same bridge, but different, one's for right of way, one's for construction.
I'm good.
For phase 2, sorry.
Okay. You're good. Okay, do I have a motion to approve what's left?
I'll move, whatever that was.
5, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9.
That's what I'm moving, yes.
All right, Sager seconds it. Any discussion? Okay. Go to roll vote. Mr. Scala.
Yes.
Mr. Van Bergen.
Yes.
Mr. Kaminsky.
Yes.
Mr. Kunkel.
Yes.
Mr. Thomas.
Yes.
Mr. Sager.
Yes.
And I'll vote yes. 5.1, Mr. Scala.
You want a motion first?
Yeah, make the motion.
Oh, I'll make a motion.
All right,
I'll,
Ms. Van Bergen seconds. All right, go ahead.
So I read through the 140 pages or whatever it was that y'all put out there for this. And, there's a lot of really good stuff in here. And I think based on my questioning last time, this is somewhat of a requirement that we have to do in order to get funding for everything. I guess my only concern is perception of how the public views this. Because, there's a lot of really good things in here, but there's no dollar amounts attached to any of it. And so the reality is that without funding, you can't do a lot of this. And it doesn't talk about funding at all in the document.
Yeah.
So it doesn't even have a disclaimer up front like, yeah, this is really good stuff, but, the county's got to fund it along with other, entities. And so, I understand the reason why we have it, but I don't want public to perceive like this will happen and this will happen soon and this will create the perception that I don't know. That's my challenge with it.
I hear you, Mr. Scala. You're giving the public a lot of credit that they actually read the document, which I hope they do, but we intentionally didn't talk about funding, right? Because we know that is sort of up to the whims of not only this board, but every local agency around the county. They have to figure out what the right level of funding for safety projects is. And every agency is going to come down to a different place in that debate, right? That said, this plan really helped us identify what are the recommendations, where should we prioritize when we have funding for safety projects, where should we be looking, what should we be looking at, right? So that's kind of what the plan was supposed to get to. But I understand your concern that funding wasn't part of this.
Well, and so like in the later part of the document, it had, I think, the top 200, if I'm going from memory,
Yeah.
the top 200 projects that, are of safety concern.
Locations, yeah.
And again, there's a lot that has to go into anything coming off of that list. And so I guess, and I assume the public will read this, so, it's like one of those things where like, if they see a project that they have a passion about being number 5 on the list, you know, I don't want there to be a perception that, yeah, that means that they should get to it in the next year because it's number 5 or something, you know? I mean, I guess, is it possible to add some disclaimer up front about that? I guess I just,
Yeah, anything's possible. If the county board or the committee wants us to put some, thing in the, so that it's clear to the public that funding needs to be identified for these projects, and it's not like we're going to be spending our entire budget on this to get everything done next year, right? This is going to be something phased in over many years as funding becomes available. We can add some language to that effect. That's not a problem whatsoever.
We could probably add a paragraph to the executive summary
Yeah.
to that end. and
It's a one-liner, as funding becomes available.
Yeah, I could do.
And if you're looking for McHenry County's priorities, please reference the long-range transportation and 5-year program.
I could even add it in the document itself as well as within the resolution, maybe a whereas, something just to sort of people, if people read the resolution, they'll see that too. If that's something that would help assuage some concern.
well, it just, again, it's perception, right? So I just don't want to create a false perception by anyone that reads the document, so.
Anybody else? Mr. Sager?
I do appreciate the fact that it is important to take a look at funding and the public's concern with regards to funding. But I think we just have to keep in mind, and I think it's a great report. I really appreciate the depth and breadth of the plan and the overview that it provided, and the prioritization that it provided. But I do see your point that while we can't necessarily identify potential costs, because that's all we're saying, because it's, it's almost hokum, if you will. That's very scientific word, by the way. Hokum, in terms of
Why are you looking at me?
Trying to put dollar values in there, I don't think that would serve anybody, because it could get us in huge trouble down the road. But at the same time, I do believe that you're right in terms of a statement. I think that would be really good, that this is all depending upon available funds at any time in the future.
Anything else? All right, then we'll proceed to vote. Ms. Van Bergen?
Yes.
Mr. Kaminsky?
Yes.
Mr. Kunkel?
Yes.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Mr. Sager?
Yes.
Mr. Scala?
Yes.
And I vote yes. For the motion for 5.2.
I can take 5.2, 5.3, and 5.10 in mass if we can do that, speed things along. Does that work for you?
Okay, motion to 5.2, 3, and Mr. Sager moves.
I'll second.
Mr. Scala seconds. All right,
Aye.
go ahead, Mike.
I'm assuming this is, of course, not in the budget because it's brand new to us here. What I'm wondering is if someone's done the math, you have it, quick math in my head, $64,000 annual for the Comcast is offset by the dollars we're raising permit fees by?
Permit fees are unknown. That is an
I
estimate.
understood, but
an estimate.
you have a history of knowing.
Right, where
Where
that
those
is,
dollars
and it's
are.
right there with that.
So based on that history, where do we think permit fees with these raises will come in at?
I think about, Darrell, go ahead. I
Yeah,
like
we
that.
have in the background of these resolutions, we have the two numbers, I want to say it's 30,000 and 60,000 respectively between oversized, overweight, and the access permit fees. When we looked at a 3-year window going back. Like Joe was saying, these are variable. If development is high, we have more access fees and we're moving more trucks.
Right.
If we have fewer access, we get fewer access permits, therefore fewer revenue. So these really are just estimates to try to forecast, to give you guys a number to reflect on where we've been and where this change may have been. These weren't a direct correlation to the Comcast. These are really mutually exclusive events that just happen at the same time.
But getting directly to your question, we expect that the increase in fees will more than offset the cost for the new internet service.
That's what I just want to make aware is the fact that this $64,000 annually, and it's a 60-month contract, correct?
Yeah, but we're splitting that cost.
We're splitting
Right,
it
with Valley.
Right,
Yeah.
Right, but I'm saying those costs keep going, rolling on, and they're not, and what we're looking at a budget. But some of these things, if we approve 5.2 and 5.3, will help mitigate some of those costs ahead of the budget.
Correct.
Yes.
That's it. Thank you.
I have a question.
Sure.
You know, we talk about these fees for the permits, and that we issue those here
Yes.
in this office for overweights.
Yes.
Okay. I had a question come up from one of the constituents that had a piece of farm equipment that was going down the road, he was stopped by, it broke down, they had a little boy come and pick him up. The sheriff, this is kind of stupid, but the sheriff stopped him, said, "Do you have a permit for overweight?" No, didn't, never had a permit, the equipment company was picking it up, okay? He made him unload that piece of equipment and drive it to the state line. So, do they need a permit, and how long does it take them to
We can
get?
ask I don't believe our ordinance really addressed, this would be more of an emergency breakdown and repair type thing. Like if a semi broke down, if garbage truck broke down, how do they address
So if
that with
equipment-
a tow truck and a local?
If equipment dealer for agriculture, they're not exempt if they're on a low boy though?
No.
They're not, okay. That's all I wanted to ask.
Ag still gets a permit, it's still just a size of a way, because our biggest concern is impact to the roadway paving structure and bridges. So whether you're a giant tractor or a big dozer, you're still big going over the roadway and bridges.
Okay, I just wanted to ask that question. Thank you. Any other, Mr. Krinsky?
On your Comcast, you want to go to that, and you want to keep AT&T as back wide. And the second question, when you talk about your bandwidth, are you talking just a couple of seconds that you got to wait longer, or you got to wait a week before? That's a substantial 300 and
It's a lot of month. Mr. Kropalski's been involved with IT more than I have on this issue.
Yeah, so we're relying on IT with this, obviously, with this. We always have a backup system, even now, because you can't afford if we lose something that you don't have to.
what would it do?
The speed is dramatically higher, and that for it. I can't tell you what it means as far as the response, but I can tell you right now, on the current system, when we all log in the morning and actually throughout the day, Valley High sucks up a majority of the bandwidth, so things are slow here. And that slow may be a matter of perspective. You know, if you're some of us, we like that instantaneous, you hit that mouse and you want it, it pops up. That's not always the case here for that. So this is gonna make it more reliable, as I understand it, and substantially faster.
Valley High agreeing, or seeing the same resolution on Friday. Valley High is really the bigger problem. All medical things have gone paperless. We've got nurses running around with iPads and such, and what we have out here just isn't getting it done anymore. And this is a good 5-year solution. I like that it's a 5-year solution, because I think there's a very good chance that there's different opportunities in 5 years, but this is gonna get us through the next 5 years. I think DOT is being generous in sharing this 50/50 with Valley High. I've said that at the beginning, but it's a good solution.
How much is it costing us to keep the other as backup?
I don't think we know that, or I don't know that.
I don't know if you recall, I think it was February
February 14th.
14th, and we talked about this committee. The thought was that the internet had shut down out here. It hadn't shut down completely, but it got so slow that people perceived it as shutting down. That kind of prompted us to take another look at this.
Yeah,
I was gonna make the same comment, if you remember, Carl, when we came after a meeting, that they basically froze up screen and everything else. Can't do that during snowstorms and whatnot. And the Starlink wasn't enough to carry the system, which, that was your backup, right?
Correct.
So, this is the one hub that we really do need to have that. And I think Pete's exactly right. Within 5 years, we should see fiber optics right to the door, all things going well and all things being equal. that would change that or possibly drop that cost for us.
Mr. Scott?
Well, this isn't a new cost, we're already paying. So I don't know what the delta of the difference is, but
I don't either, but I don't think we're abandoning the old system. The old system will be the backup, and this will be the new system, in my understanding.
We're just reversing.
Yes.
Oh.
That's how Starlink goes away though, right?
So there is some cost savings somewhere.
Starlink.
Not a lot.
Yeah.
I don't know, that's why I'm asking.
But don't quote me on this, but I think those are savings for IT, not necessarily reflected in our budget. Right? So there will be additional costs for us for this new service, but I think the productivity gains and the redundancy is worth those extra costs. That's our perspective.
I can get you the exact same.
Before financing.
Well, there has to be some amount.
Right, but it doesn't reflect on transportation's budget because you guys aren't paying that, right?
The existing internet service, do we pay for that, Connie? Do you know, by chance?
I can tell you, I've never approved an internet
Okay.
service bill.
So I think that's all.
So this is new expense to us that we carry. That's what I was saying with the new fees. Hopefully this is picking up this new expense.
Okay. Okay, well said and done, we're gonna vote. Mr. Kaminsky?
Yes?
Mr. Kunkel?
Yes.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Mr. Sager?
Yes.
Mr. Scala?
Yes.
Ms. McBurgan?
Yes.
And I'll vote yes. Okay, we're down to budget review.
All right, the much anticipated DOT presentation on the fiscal year 2026 budget. We are proud to present our draft budget for fiscal year 2026 for the DOT, totaling just short of $83 million this year. As in previous years, staff will give a brief overview of what we hope to accomplish in the next year. You do have some of that in your packet, and how each of our 6 funds will be impacted with revenues and expenditures. And that, as you all are aware, and Paul, as you're becoming aware with this stuff, we do have several funding sources that we use to fund not only our day-to-day operations, but all of our projects and everything with that. Before we turn it over to staff, though, county administration would like to kick off the meeting, and then we'll turn it over and we'll go right into our capital program.
Thank you. Now, I'll be brief. Kevin and I were talking a little bit in the parking lot on the way in, and I said, this is a big budget to talk about, not just because it's big, but because there's so many moving parts, so many different revenue sources and projects that can be accelerated or delayed. And I thought about, is there a theme for today? And it kind of is like decisions today, Mrs. Bryan's comment, impact the future. And decisions, when I say today, decisions we make this fall are going to impact how the county operates in the future. We always get a great budget presentation from DOT, and we're going to get it again today. As Joe said, this budget is $82.7 million. And of that $82.7 million, only 9.4 is property tax. There's a lot of other dollars moving in. Also, as Gary has kind of acknowledged before, in this budget season right now, we're tight. There's a lot of pressure to minimize or even reduce the property tax levy. But even if we maximize the 2.9% we can get, we're still $1 million short. So we're looking for solutions. We're looking for paths out. And as we look for what we're going to do, over and over again, we look to where the money is. And the money has been at transportation in recent years. And we've really kind of eroded some of the tools that transportation had for years, and that the matching levy and the bridge levy. We're talking about today, we're proposing a further reduction of $500,000 in those 2 levies. But in the process, we've kind of transformed how we are funding transportation. With the county board's foresight of a year and a half ago to allow the county option motor fuel tax to move to 8% and then escalate.
8 cents.
8 cents, thank you. You caught it immediately.
It's all on eyes go, what?
You get another breath. We moved to 8 cents, and it's been indexed twice since then. It's a really new, powerful revenue stream. The state gave us the RTA sales tax in 2008, 2009. You know, as we've seen inflation go really rapid in the last few years, so too has the sales tax revenues that are associated with those inflation. But we've really shifted away from the matching and bridge levies. Those levies were over $2 million several years ago. What you're gonna see today is they're like at 200 and 300,000 respectively. As we've taken those dollars down, we're now down to the bottom of the barrel. If we have this discussion next year, there's nothing left to move dollars around. So, you know, this is kind of the last time we're gonna be able to use those levies to help us out. So that's really important. So talk about decisions today impact the future. We can't continue to come back to the well of the transportation money to rescue the general fund. That's it. There's nothing left. And this is like about the last $500,000 we can get out of the matching and bridge. So Carrie's going to talk for a little bit about some of the histories of the levies and kind of put what I just said kind of in graphical terms. So Carrie, I'll shut up.
So I think most of you have heard my little speech already. Just kind of, we're going to all the committees, just kind of reiterating what we talked about at the committee of the whole, you know, further education on general fund versus special funds, and you know, how the special funds operate within silos, but also kind of, as Pete was alluding to, is how, like, the interrelationship between the funds. And so, you know, we're not going to talk much about the general fund today because all of the highway funds are special revenue funds, so just meaning they have specific sources of revenue that are restricted for specific purposes. But again, talking about how we can even move things around within those funds to take some pressure off of the general fund. So we're going to focus, starting with the county highway fund. So this is really their, I think you guys all know, the main operating fund where the personnel is. So looking at, you know, we looked at something similar with the general fund, looking at the months of reserve. So just to remind you, the calculation at the bottom, when we talk about months of reserve, is we look at the fund balance, and this is at a point in time. So this is at the end of fiscal year 24. So obviously, cash flows, they go up and down, but this is it at the end of the year. And then we look at the next year's budget, and we just, the thought behind it is, if this fund stopped collecting all dollars, how long could it last just based on what it has in its bank account? So that's really what we use as a metric for a lot of these funds. So the fund balance to end 24 was 4.6. The 25 budget is 9.4. So that gets us at just under 6 months of reserve. Any questions on that? Is that kind of?
We built this fund back up over the last 3 years. It got in trouble. It got in trouble. Right. You know, we hit it too hard to try and rescue the general fund. And we got it back in good shape.
Yeah. And you know,
One of the ways we did that is to stop buying snowplows with
Yes,
this money.
that was one of
And
the
started
things.
buying snowplows with RTA money.
And so, to be honest, when we were kind of finishing the audit of 24, I was initially thinking maybe this 9 million in this fund could be another tool.
Yeah.
But you know, I think all the departments were experiencing a lot of personnel inflation costs. And really, so when we sat down and dove into the needs, you know, this 9 million is where it needs to stay. And so why is a 6-month reserve in this particular fund important? So I don't know if you remember when, at the committee of the whole, when we talked about the general fund, the property tax is just under 40% of that fund's total revenue. And so sales tax and some of the other state reimbursements, that comes in monthly. So the general fund has other sources of revenue that come in monthly or, so this fund, if you look, 92% of the revenue for this fund come from property tax. So property tax, as you know, we pay in June and September. So really, if you think the last distributions are probably hitting this fund in October. So it needs to go from October to early June with really not a significant amount of revenue. So that's why 6 months is important, so it can make that time to make payroll. And then kind of tying back into the interdependence on other funds, you know, this kind of the safety net, or if you see on this chart, when we were in 2021, when the fund reserve was negative, in order to meet the payroll demands, this fund was borrowing from RTA. So if you think about how the funds relate to each other, if we're starting to rely on RTA for other things, or in the 5-year transportation plan, the RTA fund is spent down, you know, then you kind of start to lose the safety net for this fund. So that's why we have to look at all the funds collectively and make sure each one is healthy and where we can move things around. Does that kind of make sense? So I do have these charts for the other funds. We can go through them if you have questions, but really the other funds are project funds. So it doesn't quite make the same amount of sense because, you know, it might save up for a project, so the fund balance will go really high, and then they'll spend $10 million on a road project, so it's not enough.
The highway fund has a very steady expenses.
Correct. This is similar to what we see for the general fund. So, just kind of a little reminder of the whole picture. I know you guys are focused on transportation, but you know, we really work on this exercise every year when we start the budget, looking at all the funds, which ones are healthy, which ones are struggling.
What's your forecast for the end of this fiscal year?
Just over 6. And that's at 9 million. I know, I was.
All right.
I mean, so if we can characterize this, we're kind of in the sweet spot right now. It's probably where we need to be.
For this fund, yes.
Right.
But remember, as, like, even if you look at the budget operating expense, as that goes up,
Yes.
and the fund reserve, that's what we're actually seeing in the general fund, as the fund balance stays steady, but expense continues to grow. So I think this fund is in a good spot, but, you know, 9 million next year is probably gonna have to go up.
Right.
So,
You're also, I think, trying to tell us that for the rest of our budget, you can't borrow from this one anymore.
Right, exactly.
And when your levy comes down to it, if, you know, for us, the ones that want to reduce levy and all that, we're gonna have a big problem. That we're gonna blow up on ourselves.
Everybody gets equally.
well, and if you see, so this fund, during the cut 10, this fund, you can see when it got into the negative, was really relied on heavily. And so in '21, in order to get it back up to positive, the general fund, a resolution was passed for a one-time $3 million transfer from the general fund. And then increasing the levy, I think it was 7.5 to 9. And then moving, obviously, the capital out. That helps.
A series of steps
Right, and
to make
that's.
it healthy.
And that's what we look at every year when we look at the total aggregate extension. You know, last year was 65 million. We have to divide that up amongst the different levies. And so, you know, we make recommendations, you guys pass or discuss. You know, like, we've talked a lot about VHC, FICA, and IMRF. Those funds are in a similar situation where this fund was in 2021. So again, it seems, you know, as we work to keep the levy as low as possible, we're having to manage.
Tomorrow at
Yeah.
Public Health, we're gonna hear from the VAC and their levy request, and it's significant. And we really have to just take it.
So let me ask Mr. Sager a question. On the Metro, Base, RTA, all that going on right now, with their fiscal cliff. And there was talk they wanted to grab all our motor fuel tax. And then it was dead. Are they gonna resurrect that in the middle of the night, you think? What's the talk on what they're doing now?
I'm sure Scott has been involved in a lot of.
Oh, they're gonna take any of our funds, is what I'm wondering.
The reality is that they have proposals out there. As you know, the Senate passed a bill. It went to the House. It was not even brought to the floor yet. There's a lot of work to be done. There's been talk whether or not there's going to be a summer session. I personally don't think that's going to happen. Summer's rapidly going away, but there's a veto session. The question is, are they going to take it up in the veto session? Again, I'm pessimistic. I don't think that's going to happen. I think that's going to occur in the new session in the spring. But I do believe that they've got at least some stepping stones to walk off of and move forward with both the Senate and the House under the new session. And I think it's going to be a priority at that time, where I don't believe that it was quite the priority this time. The question is, the impact, and we've got meetings right now on RTA board where we're looking significantly at the impact and what service cuts might be necessary, in this coming fiscal year. Having said all that, there is a lack of consolidation around funding or revenue sources. And that's kind of the biggest issue that is out there at the moment. There's been talk about sweeping RTA funds or RTA.
Repurposing.
Yeah, repurposing, right.
The county quarter percent.
Right, exactly. So that has been on the table. It's being discussed, and so that's a huge concern I think that we all have. Other concerns have to do with other fees and that which might be appropriated, but to me, that's the biggest concern, is that we could potentially see a reduction.
The Senate version that did pass did not take the county's quarter percent of RTA. That's good news. I think when it was floated, it was 5 alarm fires and DuPage, Will, and Kane, because they used portions of those dollars for public safety purposes. Lake and McHenry are only two counties that don't use it. We only use it for transportation. So we delayed transportation projects, or it's easier to undo than Will County was. Courthouse bond debt tied to that. It was a non-starter in those other counties. And I think that serves to help us.
One of the biggest concerns that I have, Scott, you can speak up, but Senator DeWitt is going to, he has announced his retirement, resignation, and that's going to come the end of next year. And, he's a strong proponent for, I think, a reliable, balanced, sustainable position, and also maintenance of funding for local counties. But I am concerned about that. Scott?
Yeah, I think it's possible that if they don't take all of it, maybe there's a percentage that the counties are going to be required to put towards public transit. Now, we already do a percentage, roughly 25% of what we're spending in the RTA sales tax does go to public transit already through MC Ride, our Connect program, and other things. So it may not impact us that much. But if it's 50% or 75%, then yeah, we're going to see some huge changes in what types of projects we can get done.
And then along those lines is, it gets in the what-if land, if an RTA bill passes, it assumes all of the MC ride costs and those sorts of things, that would free up some cash for us, but we just don't know.
But that wouldn't affect our budget we're going to pass this fall.
Well, it would, depending on what it is.
Well, that is just how we have to shift priorities around, right?
Yeah, what the timing of it is, there's
This budget-
different effective dates on it if they were going to cut
This
something.
budget's predicated on the rules today. And how else could you do it?
Right.
Yeah, so, even if they pass something in the lame duck session, which probably is more likely, but, the reality is we're already in our budget, we've already passed our budget, and then they're gonna start something with an effective date or whatever, which is in the middle of our budget year. So, yeah, we're gonna have to make changes.
This will be nimble.
Nice to talk about all what ifs.
Be light on
Well,
their feet.
Okay.
Thank you,
guys.
thank you, Pete and Carrie, for that and that background as a refresher for everybody. And speaking of refresher, we'll get next into the DOT capital equipment, as there was some conversation here before, and Carrie referenced it when we were lower there. So let's go through our capital plan for this coming budget.
So not just for Mr. Thomas's refresher, but all the committee. This is important because Peter already kind of talked about this, but historically, this department budgeted for capital equipment, snowplows, trucks, things like that, out of our highway fund. That put a strain on the highway fund balance because the levy wasn't keeping up with the needs of our capital equipment and staffing and everything else we were doing. So we deferred a lot of equipment. During the tough times 5 to 10 years ago, we did a lot of deferrals, which meant we had to catch up with higher capital investments in FY '24, '25, and '26. You can see those numbers here. So in order to sort of smooth out some of those costs and not have to increase the levy significantly, the county board took action in 2024 or 2023 to increase the county option motor fuel tax to 8 cents per gallon beginning on January 1st, 24. We then, at the same time, we moved all of our capital equipment purchases from highway fund to county option. So that freed up about $2 million, $2.3 million in our highway fund. Those expenses were no longer being applied there, they were being applied under our county option motor fuel tax.
So in other words, if we had not passed that county option expansion, we would need $11 million.
It would probably, we would be standing here today asking for a levy of about 11.5 million. That would be our request in the highway fund.
At least.
Had the board not taken that.
We were at the point of deferring every year too.
Right.
So if we had to defer those previous years, our needs were just going up.
And as Carrie had already mentioned, we're currently asking for a flat $9 million levy instead. So that is kudos to this board, to this committee for taking this action to keep the levy flat instead of an increase of $2.5 million, which is what we would have been otherwise.
There's still a cost of $2 million on the equipment, right?
Yes, yes.
So where does that come from, a different part of the levy?
Yes, not the levy.
Not the levy.
So we're paying for all of our equipment now with our county option motor fuel tax.
So historically, Paul, with that, any of our equipment came out of the 6,000 series, out of the general fund, which is property tax levy. The board made, in this committee is where it started, a conscientious decision that we are going to move that from the levy, highway fund, to county option. That was a change, because county option is only used for projects. So that's why it was a big change that we were looking to buy equipment from the.
January 1st, county, 2024, the county option went from 4 cents a gallon to 8, 8 and a third. Now it's like 8
Within
and a
that.
Now it's 8.5, yeah.
Yeah.
That new money is buying.
Is it a scoop bucket?
Which is so county option is its own fund. So like when we're talking about the highway fund, it's its own, this is its own fund, RTA is its own fund.
Yeah, this is one of our 6 funds, Paul, that we had. And this was a lever that the board could pull at that time.
And what's great about the county option motor fuel tax fund is that more than just residents pay into that.
Right.
Visitors in every county that are filling out their gas tanks.
With their vote.
Okay,
So
thank you.
with that sort of teeing up Ed here to talk about some of our capital equipment that we're requesting for next year. Take it away.
Okay, so as Scott stated, we've got an 8-year capital program that we put together, and each year it looks like we need approximately $2 million to be able to maintain and replace our equipment. This year we've got 14 pieces of equipment that we're looking to replace, 3 of them being the snow plows, which are the big ticket. And then we've got 6 pickups, a 1-ton, a vegetation trailer, a 0-turn mower, and a coal planter. And a skid steer also involved there, so that is showing approximately $2.1 million. And open any questions on the equipment we're replacing, and we'll go from there.
We turn those around and put those on the market, right?
Through auction.
Through auction, right?
Yes, purchasing handles that for us.
And can you tell me about what the return is there? I mean, it's not a lot, but what is the return?
Anywhere from 7 to,
We've recently got between 5 and 17,000.
5 and 17,000. It varies quite a bit. They got, the last one was going to Virginia, right?
Yes.
And then one went to North Dakota? Yeah.
So 5 to 17 is per piece or total year's auctions?
Per piece.
Per piece. It's in the hopes of when we get this turnaround by having the Peterbilts that have a higher resale that we can do better.
And that includes the pickup trucks, right? You're saying,
Right.
that's a,
Everything goes into the, what is it, Gov deals? Gov deals.
yeah, okay, perfect, thank you.
For the year, we anticipate somewhere between $100,000 and $200,000 coming back from the auction. Depending on how all these vehicles are performed at the auction.
Between 100 and 200,000, correct. Thank you.
Will that load at 2.1, or is that?
It's just considered revenue, just like any other, just like our water fuel tax revenue.
It can.
We can't, okay, it could offset that cost, whatever you bring in.
This is the cost of the new purchases as estimated, and then when we look at the budget on the whole, it brings in other revenues.
Mr. Scala?
Joe wasn't able to answer my question, so. What, so there's the 3 plows, you got 2 Western Star and 1 International. So what's the,
The Western Stars are regular snow plows. The Internationals are 6x6. It's like the equivalent to our grader. That one's the one that's big bowl that goes out and really pushes the big drifts back. It's got a bigger cabin chassis and it's due for replacement. It's got the bigger benching wing on it. It doesn't have a patrol wing. It's just all together a bigger piece of equipment for pushing a lot of snow.
okay, so, and so that's a replacement for a unit that is of similar,
No, that is the unit being replaced.
Yeah.
Yes.
okay. All right.
Those are all listed there, are the original items.
That's the old stuff you're looking at with the new replacement cost.
Like the 2 Western snowplows, they're the Western Star, I should say.
Because we're going to
are being
Peterbilt
replaced
now
with
with the old
Peterbilt.
stuff, right?
Oh, I thought this is what you were buying.
No.
Yeah, that's what I thought too. We don't know that yet until we put it out,
Oh, okay.
see what's out there.
Okay. But you know, this
And we're all caught up on all those delayed trucks. Everybody's caught up now
They're ordered.
from the COVID.
They're ordered, we
I
have,
mean, the order, but we got one.
We have
No.
6 chassis F&L waiting to get bodies put on them, and we have 1 truck that, for our boom truck that's out, Terex and South Dakota, ready for body.
That's incredible.
We got all the cabin chassis, we just don't, they're not built yet.
Okay.
And we're not seeing those timeframes necessarily reducing substantially in the near future, are we, Ben?
The goal is for them to increase their productivity because they did just build a 100,000 square foot building, but they have had some delays in getting that open. So as of right now, nothing is getting quicker, but in the next couple of years, it should get quicker.
Hang on to that International.
So we appropriate the funds for those trucks because we might not get these for 2 or 3 years.
Well, we put, whenever the budget is passed, that's why when we have our committee meetings, we have those resolutions to go at, for the November meeting, the same day that the budget is considered. So that comes December 1st, we can cut a purchase order. So we're trying to get it in there as quickly as possible,
So they lock our prices at that purchase order.
depending on how we purchase them. If it goes out for bid, yes. If you buy them from a joint purchasing agreement, that can fluctuate depending on how that bid was done.
I mean, we don't have anything of those 8 gonna bite us in the rear that's gonna be 100,000 a year or more.
We just took delivery of our fiscal year 23 plow trucks and nothing increased.
Okay.
They've been doing a really good job of keeping the prices for us because we've been such good customers throughout the years with them.
It's a finicky position, that's for sure, because they'll be more than happy to drop you from the rotation and sell it to somebody else.
so if you get them this year, didn't you just say it was a 2023, what you're buying?
So the trucks we just took delivery of were fiscal year 23 orders, so they're
Would be this
model year
year's.
24s. We just took delivery of them this summer.
So we bought them, we got the order placed December of 2023 and just took delivery summer of 25. So we got 2023 trucks.
But they're getting better. They're starting to catch up.
That's how far.
Well, they can't be 23, or 24 trucks.
It's the model year. The model year starts
Yeah,
towards
right.
the end of the previous year.
Well, that's a big difference, you know, resale value, you know.
With the big equipment though, everybody's in the same boat, so we don't look at it so much at the year that it was produced as the mileage and the hours on the piece of equipment is always looked at.
How it's used.
Any other questions on capital? Otherwise, we'll get to the exciting stuff. Thank you.
All right, so now we'll go and turn it over to Assistant County Engineer Daryl Coons to go through what we see for our projects.
Yeah, thanks,
DJ.
Joe. All right, so DOT's got a lot of great projects all throughout the county. There's a lot of text up here. I'm not gonna read every one to you, but we'll touch on some of the things that design section and construction are doing. Right now, design section is working on a lot of different bridge projects. Obviously, that's been our theme for a long time, as well as intersection safety projects. We also have head and bike projects going on right now in the design phase as well. In the future, you'll see some newer type projects coming into design with our intersection safeties, a lot of bridges, Lakewood Road extension, Akron extension, as well as perhaps some township bridges also. Design will be putting out the Johnson Road, West Solon, and Allendale bridges for construction. Those will go to letting later this year and going into construction being built next year. That's why they kind of show a little bit half and half on the side there. In construction right now, Randall Road North, ongoing right now. We've got Miller Road closed in that, so drive carefully as you go through the work zone out there. We do have a very large county resurfacing program that's going on. I do want to tout the opening of the Millstream Road bridges. That was a 2-year construction project from our construction group. We got that delivered under budget and ahead of schedule, as well as Vandecar Road Bridge. That was a township one that we put out with Hebron Township, under budget, ahead of schedule, so those are very good. And we do have currently Flatiron, Hunter, and White Oaks bridges. Those are ongoing right now as well for everybody. You'll see on the other side, under construction, remote salt storage. What we've been working with the Village of Algonquin on a joint salt storage facility on their public works site down in the Village of Algonquin. We are advancing as one of the items today, a design engineering contract with hopes. Next
meeting.
Next one. We'll have an intergovernmental agreement for design engineering in front of you with hopes of construction next year. I think that's it, unless there's questions on projects, either ongoing or anything in the future.
And this is the part before the meeting I was talking about how a lot of this shouldn't be new. That you saw all this in the 5-year program last year that you approved. Now we're just getting to the 26 budget. So these new projects are sort of, we laid the groundwork last year with the 5-year program, and these were coming, and here they are. So with that, I'm going to keep this moving, unless there's questions. And we can always come back if there's business.
Anybody got questions?
I don't have a question, but I think that the reality is if we're looking at cutting budgets, and if that's a goal that the board actually has, this is where we would start thinking about cutting budgets. Now, we know that the funding is different, but publicly, everything is in the same pot from their perspective, right? They don't understand all that. So we just need to kind of be aware of those concerns, those considerations.
But that does not help, make sure I understand this correctly, that does not help our budget for overall. So
That's
I'm
right.
not sure if I understand. what
I'm just
you're
talking
saying.
about public perception.
Right,
Public-
because the thing is, if we cut a couple of these bike paths, especially amongst the constituents who are really pushing for this tax cut, then they have to mentally weigh the fact Do I want a bike path or do I want my taxes cut? I realize it doesn't come from that bucket,
They don't understand that.
but they lose services or they lose value as we cut budget. That's what happens. And sometimes we have to publicly let them know that they are losing these services or these values in order to cut the budget. If they still come back and say, hey, I don't want to drive on that road, well, then we've got an option. Yes.
So I'd hear everybody's opinion on that.
All right, Scott, now go through the fun stuff.
These are, again, this is a rehash of our 6 funds. The top 3 are property tax based, right? Those are levies. The bottom 3, oh, go ahead.
That's the 9.1 million.
Yeah, that's the 9.4 that Pete mentioned earlier. The bottom 3 are our project funds. That's how we actually fund, those are not property taxes, those are user fees, either MFT or sales tax. And you can see sort of how much each of them are. In total, if you add up the federal, state, and local gas taxes, you're at about 75.2 cents per gallon. If anyone cares, that's where we're at right now. And a lot of those are indexed, the federal MFT is not. So the state and the local are indexed to inflation. The federal hasn't been indexed since 1993.
Sorry, just a quick question. Earlier, for some people who weren't here, you guys did a really good bridge fund levy presentation to all of us as a board at one point. Is there designs made to do that again, especially for all the new people? Because it's a little disingenuous to not explain the fact that we have been not funding that bridge fund levy, fully using it for other, it was eye-opening for me when I got to see your presentation on bridges.
Yeah, we do that every year, and we'll do it again. And I'll get a little bit more into the details on bridge fund here later in the presentation. But before that, I wanted to just show this. I show this every year. This is just to show that the MFT, the motor fuel tax, is not sustainable. Even though it's indexed to inflation and it goes up, we are about to hit, it's predicted that Illinois is going to hit peak gas cars on the road in 2029. So starting in 2030, you're going to see less gas cars on the road every single year forever. And so eventually, we are going to plateau and start to decline our MFT collections, right? So it may be a good train to ride while it is right now, but in the future, it's not something we can rely on going forward.
Where are you getting that stat? The manufacturing, you just had a plant, Lionel said, hey, we're going in bankruptcy, done with electric. How, where is that source coming from saying, oh no, we're gonna have all electric cars and no gas? I don't think
Not
so.
all. So the industry sources I read, Carl, say that California's already reached that peak. So California is now on the way down. They're going to see less gas cars every year. Illinois is a couple years behind, as are other states in the country.
Is that they're not gonna be buying the cars, or is that
Yes.
the people saying, hey, I'm out of this state, so I'm leaving with my gas car?
I didn't want to get into the details of this, but I will. So every year, there's a certain percentage of the fleet that comes out, right, due to crashes or just end of their life. You then replace those with new cars, right? So those are cars coming into the market. A certain percentage of those are electric, right? And in California, that percentage is higher. And so if you, as total, there's actually less and less gas cars driving on the road in California today every single year. And Illinois, again, is 5 years behind, but they're going to be there soon. A lot of the Pacific Coast states are going to be the first to hit this peak gas car plateau. It's important. In 2017, the world as a whole, they actually predict, with hindsight, they're saying that in 2017 it was peak gas cars for the world as a whole. And America is obviously behind that. But in China, the number of gas cars on the road are becoming way less every year. Because they're all in on electric way before we were as a country. So just, again, all this is not to get bogged down, but just to show that MFT is not sustainable, period, right? And even those like Mr. Kunkel who bought a hybrid, he's paying less gas tax every year. Even though he still feels wrong. I'm kidding, right?
Everybody's pointing the finger right now. Oh, you hope electric, about a hybrid, yeah.
Yeah, but he said it was electric.
In my defense, I drove behind my RV, which gets about 4.5 miles to the gallon. So
Saving there. All right, so here I'm gonna go quickly through our 6 funds, in specific, the revenues and expenditures. This is the highway fund. This is how we fund staff, our building, just the day-to-day operations of our department. We mentioned that we're having a flat $9 million levy. You can see that from 2023 to 2026, flat at $9 million. And that's only because you as a board increased the motor fuel tax. That's how we kept it flat. Otherwise, it would be 11.5 million, somewhere in that range. So that's a $9 million levy, plus our other income we get. We mentioned the permit fees earlier. That feeds into this $9.8 million figure on the bottom. So $9 million of that is levy. 800,000 of that are other fees, permit fees, intergovernmental. We get some staff that actually get reimbursed from a federal grant. That's included here as well. So that 9.8 is our total revenues for 2026. This is how, wow, the chart doesn't look good. This is the expenditures for that. Most of that is personnel, right? 75% of it is just paying staff. The other comes in contractual capital commodities. And then we have about $250,000 that's going to beef up our fund balance in 2026 to, again, make sure that the highway fund is sustainable. The matching fund, again, is a levy. This is the cut we talked about. So currently in 2025, we're levying $500,000. And then in 2026, we are proposing a $200,000 levy. So that's a $300,000 levy cut.
That levy space is going to move, as proposed, over to help the general fund, over to help IMRF, over to help BAC. Where do we need the money?
Correct. And then what we're spending out of our matching fund is engineering. And a lot of this is engineering on bridges and things like that. That's typically what we use in our matching fund for. Bridge levy, again, we are cutting the bridge levy in 2026. We're proposing a $300,000 cut, going from $500,000 down to $200,000 levy. And again, like Pete just said, this will help our other county departments that need more levy. We can give this to them. What are we spending the bridge fund on? Mainly bridge maintenance type stuff, but then we're also putting some money back into the fund balance to make sure it's sustainable in the future. So this is an important slide. This just shows what we already talked about today, which is that in 2025, this year's budget, we cut about 5% from our levy. And that is primarily due to a matching fund going from $900,000 in '24 to $400,000 this year. Then, in 2026, we're proposing another $500,000 cut in our levy, another 5% cut. So all told, the county DOT, our department, has reduced the levy by over 10% in the last 2 years. And at the same time, we also stabilized our highway fund. So this is just to give us some credit, I think, and give this department, give this committee some credit that we've done both of these things at the same time. So kudos to you.
Mr. Scalise, got a question?
So in both the MASH and the bridge, you're talking about bridge. So you said for the MASH, it's basically engineering for bridge. And you said in the bridge fund, it's mostly maintenance.
Yeah.
Our spend for bridge projects is more than what the fund has. So conceptually, help me out for the, what we're talking about, because ultimately you are taking those monies, whether it's from RTA or otherwise, you're still spending the money on projects.
Yes.
So which pot it's coming out of is been altered.
Yes.
So the space that you're creating is still, the spend is still the spend. So it's just what pocket you're pulling it out of. So I get the fact that we're conceptually creating levy space and using something that's non-levy spaced. So that's really what the differentiation is.
Correct.
But the actual spend is still the same.
We have not cut projects due to this levy decrease. I'll say that. And so Mr. Scala is correct in that we transitioned some things, like some bridge projects that we were gonna pay for with bridge and matching, we are now paying for with MFT or RTA. We can do that because we have fund balances in MFT and RTA to move stuff in there. But over the long term, if we're levying $1 million less every year, forever, eventually we're gonna have to start delaying or thinking differently about what we can take on, project-wise. We haven't seen the impact yet, but you could only give up $1 million a year for so long without seeing some project impacts,
Right,
right?
and we've been very good at finding ways to try keeping projects on the schedule, but you do defer them. And when you do defer them, the cost is only going up. So that delta continues, to Scott's point, get bigger. Every year you don't take those available revenues.
In this case, in fiscal '27, which is not up there, we may need 9.3 in highway funding. Well, where's it gonna come from? We're gonna take the rest of that .2 on bridge and matching. That's the point. We're done. We don't have any more, we don't have any more levers to pull out here with regard to property tax.
Well, I guess that's what I'm trying to make the point.
I'm trying to make it work.
It's not the projects that are being altered, it's strictly levy capacity is really what it comes down to.
Yes.
And the fact that we're not able to quantify our levy space because of the things that we've done on the board, this is, I don't want to say it's a smoke and mirrors, but all it's doing is it's not creating a project situation, it's creating a levy problem, is really what it is. Because the more we continue to Band-Aid the levy, which is really what this is doing, you're continuing to go down that road and not being able to continue the sustainability of the levy request.
Mr. Senior?
I share exactly the same concern. I mean, the proverbial manure is gonna hit the fan here at some point. And I think that we kind of, human beings are the worst at this, you know? We go through these economic cycles and we figure out what we have to do, but we never learn the lesson from that. And so we just keep repeating the same lesson over and over and over again. And it really kind of bothers me that we're taking that risk. Now, I understand, I get it, that we are borrowing from Peter to put it in Paul's pocket over here, and I get that. But we have responsibilities to assure that not only today, but in the long term, we have the capacity to take care of bridges. That's our responsibility here. And so now all of a sudden we're saying, you know, we think that we can or should, because we're good neighbors here within this committee, to support the broader fund or funds. I appreciate that, but let's not forget the long-term impact that's going to have on the work that this committee oversights. So that's I share Mike's concern.
So to both of your points, to long-term save ourselves from ourselves, basically the levy has to maximize this year, doesn't it?
So here's the problem. It's a choice that we have to make. So if board members want to cut the levy, property tax levy, that's all we're really talking about, right? When we talk about on the board, you know, board members say, well, I want to reduce property taxes. So that is one small component of the overall funding of the entire county, right? And so but you only have so much capacity to do that under the different levies that are actually put out there. So, you know, when Carrie talks about the different levies, you know, there's levies that are underwater. We need to move levy capacity to that. Well, we only have so many levies and we only have so much capacity in each levy.
Right.
So when we talk about what we're cutting, to be truly blunt about it, you have to cut stuff that is levy attached. Meaning we can cut bridge projects, we can cut we can cut whatever. But if the funding doesn't come from a levy-type fueled source, then it really doesn't do jack shit, because it still creates the same problem.
I think the word was manure.
Oh, manure, sorry. So to answer your question, it's not about what we want to do as far as taking maximum levy, half the levy, none of the levy, just new growth. It's about the shell game of where the money comes from and how you are going to spend it.
No, I understand that, and one of our problems is the tax levy. A lot of that is from wage increases every year, and that's goes
But
every
again-
year.
but again,
And
there's-
so if we take a flat levy or a decrease, we're screwed within a short time.
It becomes extremely challenging in fiscal '27, and fiscal '28, and that's what Carrie is going to show you guys at the Cal meeting in 2 weeks.
Mr. Compton?
If we do, let's just say the exercise of hypothetically saying that the board all can vote in, cut the levy by 3%, it would require that we literally make true cuts that would not come back. We have to look at this and say, okay, what is essential services, plowing roads, and I said, you know all these things, but what are we also doing externally for this county that we could pull back and say, that's gone? Because that's how you would get to that point.
There's a lot of township bridges on here that we don't have to do.
Right, but on this little point down, where we're at today, there are still places to keep everybody's budget in line without taking that nuclear option of taking that 3% out of the whole, out of the gross. But it takes a little work, and I don't like this kind of work where we're shifting it, robbing Peter to pay Paul, borrowing from Peter to pay Paul. I don't like it, because down the road, we keep exacerbating the problem.
And I'll say this, our department would love if these levies were maximized, right? The state allows us to levy up to 5 million, I think it's, last time I checked, roughly $5 or $6 million for the bridge, 5 or 6 million for the matching. Like that's by state statute what we're capped at. We're at 200,000 for next year. So there's a lot of growth, a lot of room for growth in these levies if the board chose to ever increase these levies. We can do more work, right? That's the point of all of this. These are just work, these are project funds, right? The bridge and the matching.
These used to be in the $2 million range.
Yeah, $1.8 million was the matching levy back not that long ago, less than 10 years ago, and bridge was higher than 500,000, which is what it's been.
Matching and bridge they're older tools, right? They're tools from the 80s and 90s before county option motor fuel at 4 cents in 92 and at 8 cents in 24, and before the RTA sales tax was invented. These are all older tools, and we're kind of modernized to some extent, but they're still there.
So in this budget, how much is in there for the township bridges that we spend every year? Do we have that much? 200,000?
2 million.
2 million.
We're not using the bridge levy.
Yeah, and I'll get there in a second. So
let's
again,
not talk.
the township stuff is coming out of these other funds, right?
Okay.
Because again, at $200,000 levy, we can't do much for the $200,000 levy, right? So the next fund I'll talk about is the RTA, or the RTA sales tax, which again is that 0.25% that we get back from the RTA. These are our revenues. We're expecting roughly a $16 million reimbursement from the state of Illinois for the RTA sales tax. And then if you add up interest and other reimbursements that we get in this fund, it comes up to about $38 million. And here's how we're spending that. I don't know why these charts look like this. I'm
They do
sorry.
not look like that. When we made this one here does not look like that.
But a good chunk of this is our resurfacing program. That's the roadway maintenance section you see here, 11.3 million. And engineering is another 11 million coming out of this RTA sales tax funds, with other things sprinkled in there, land ag, construction, transit. We fund our dial ride program out of this, as well as our metro contribution. Our Connect program comes out of this bucket. Our partnership with Senior Care Volunteer Network comes out of this bucket as well. So a lot of things go in here. So $38 million in expenditure. And I'll go through these others real quick and then we can take questions. So This is the state MFT that we get from the state of Illinois. We're expecting roughly
That jump in 19 to 20 was when we went from 19 to 38 cents, right?
Correct, yeah, the state of Illinois doubled their MFT.
The Build Illinois
Yeah,
program, right?
in 2019, and then they also did a capital bond program, which gave local agencies like us additional money, so that's why 20 for 22 are so high. But you can see, we've grown this by significant amounts since 2019. So about $18 million in revenue we expect there, and here's how we're spending that. Half of it's for construction. These are mainly bridge construction projects that we're funding out of our MFT fund. And then engineering and other expenses as well. And then the last one is that county option. This is the one that the county board increased. About 14 million total, but about 8 million of this is actual revenue from the NFT allotments, right? So the 8 million is what we're getting from people when they gas up in McHenry County. And then we have some utilization of fund balance and other things that yes.
That was property tax relief.
Correct. And here's how we're spending that. A lot of that maintenance activities, capital equipment. This is how we fund our plows and all of our trucks. That's where it shows up here, 2.2 million. And then engineering and some building expenses as well. So this is just the summary of that. And again, I'm sorry it looks like this. It looked a lot better on my screen.
Does not.
This is the revenue summary, 82 and 27 million.
Picasso.
And again, I'll just point out here, of the 82.7, here's that blue pie, that's the property tax levy, 9.4. All the rest is other funds or it's fund balance that we've been saving up for many, many years to get to this point. And then here's how we're spending all of that money.
Engineering needs a big.
Yeah. Why is it so much?
That's important.
So that's contractual, right?
Yeah.
So that's not staff, that's not our DOT staff, that's us paying consultants to do engineering.
Right, that's engineering on projects, so you gotta do the engineering to get to construction, and that can be cyclical, depending on what we have. We've had to save over years money to do Randall Road. When you say that, you have to find other areas that you're not going through, so we're constantly trying to balance engineering and construction. You'll see in other years, like last year, our construction number was substantially higher and our engineering dollars were less. So, and as I said, this is staff that we hire through the consultants.
And not to.
But along that line, still, when you look at project to project, the engineering cost on a project are running neck and neck with the actual project cost. It is just escalated over the years.
Yeah.
It's just incredible that you see.
I mean, you got whole crews out there, you got hundreds of people out there, and then how many engineers? 5, 6?
Oh, no, we got at least, I think, 17 different firms working right now in engineering, and multiple people at those firms. Probably you can hire that number, that's probably low. So there's a lot of work that you do for them.
So this is the big picture. Oh, yeah, go ahead, sorry.
What is the percentage of unspent funds because projects don't move forward? So between engineering and construction, what is the percentage that is unspent and basically carried over?
Like in a typical year?
Yes.
That's a good question. So at any given year, this is what we expect we're gonna spend, right? And to Mayor Sauter's point, we don't always spend exactly what we think. So I would say any given year, we might leave 10% unspent at the end of the year because either projects came in under budget or we didn't do a project that we thought we were going to in July of the previous year. Because again, this is stuff we're thinking we're gonna be doing in 15 months. We might be kicking some of these projects off. A lot can happen in 15 months.
So that could be 3.5 million.
Oh, potentially, yeah, very easily, yeah. And that's not abnormal every year. And I'm sure other departments are similar. I mean, we're a little unique because we have so many capital projects. Other departments that are running day-to-day, just paying staff, might be more dialed in what their budget numbers are.
And we'll be able to show that more when we do the 5-year program, to your point, Brian, with that is, we overprogram intentionally. We're trying to get as much done as we can. There are limitations, there's things that come up, so we do overprogram. If we actually did everything in a 5-year program, we would have to find money.
And a good example of what you're talking about is the Metra project, right? I've included money for this Metra project in the last, I think, 4 budgets.
Right.
And we've made one payment, but I thought we would have been fully already committed with our $11 million. I think we've appropriated 1.8 so far. But that money has been in every budget, and so we've just left it on the table. Because we haven't, because Metra, because that project is in Metra's hands, they're driving the timeline. So we have to budget for it because Metra says, yeah, we'll get it done next year, but sometimes that doesn't happen.
Another one that we always have to budget for is, well, we're waiting for IDOT reimbursements or bills.
Yes.
And there's some, Lake County has something that they're waiting 10 years for the bill to come, and they owe something like $10 million, is that right?
Yeah.
So every year, they've got to put it in their budget, and they don't get a bill from IDOT.
And they're complaining about this?
Yeah, because it's 10 million still that you're, it's a wrong, it's a number that you got to
Just add 10 million forward every
Yeah,
single year.
still, you'd like to be done and off the books, and, you know, those in the construction industry, you know, project closeout is a great thing. Right? And people take that for granted a lot, just because the public sees a project out there, they don't understand all the paperwork that goes behind the scenes to balance all the numbers, both for materials and the actual cost, and get that final bill. Then it's done, and then that's where Scott said, sometimes it comes in under budget, then that's great, then that's money that we didn't spend.
So how do we, Carrie, how do we really kind of reflect some of that? From one, as we're looking at planning and budgets, we don't say, okay, we're going to reduce our budget by that amount of money because we know that we're going to have that amount that is not spent, but we can't do that. So how do we kind of reflect that?
So since they're special revenue funds, they either, like if they start a project, they put it in a PO, so that spends it, or locks it in, and then that carries over, so then they wouldn't consider it in this budget. But then for stuff that comes in under budget, that just stays in their fund balance, so then if you, on some of his previous slides, when the revenue source was utilization of fund balance, that just means, so the 10% from last year that we put back in fund balance, we're gonna reallocate it in this. So I mean, there is some well, like you said, over planning for projects, but I think.
So you just, I think you got to the key question I had, and I appreciate that. So we really leave that in, quote unquote, and then we go ahead within that fund, we reallocate.
Yes, and by accounting rules, and that's what we talk about a lot with like special revenue funds, are silos. Like we can't take county option MFT money
Right.
that's left on the table and shift it to the general.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. So within that fund, we choose to reallocate. Thank you.
And lately, it's been a good problem to have because interest rates have been so high. We've earned quite a lot of interest on things that we don't spend, right? So having money left over at the end of the year to put back in the bank is a good thing to earn interest on.
Right. Thank you.
So we got one more slide here, and Joe's gonna take it away and kind of finish this up.
So these are just supplemental requests that our department put in this year. A lot of these, for some of you that have been around, you've seen these before. These are included in the county's overall capital program in Questica, when you see it. For various reasons, some of this stuff has not been funded. And again, a lot of that's for the discussions you're all having here. So our goal here is just to show you what the requests have been, but also point out some of the larger ones that we're not gonna have a choice on. And specifically, that's gonna be the fuel island replacement. And that is estimated at a cost of $1 million right now. This is our original fuel system when we moved in here in 2001. So it is at the end of its useful life. So a majority of those expenses there are the $1 million. You see some of the other smaller stuff, engineering for the emergency shelter, That's been something that's been talked about at this department for years, and also just.
We're working on grants for that.
Right, that we might be able to get something. We put in every year, the state, right, says no, and then we question them on it, and goes, oh yeah, that is an eligible expense. Well, we've been doing that for 15 years. It would have been nice with that, so. And then the space needs to, we talked about the Village of Algonquin site with that. You'll see when we bring it forward, it's gonna be for just salt. There's not room to build a facility there, so we will need to look at where we put a facility potentially on this property.
Can I just kind of add on that? So speaking of funding, so when it says Fund 400, you guys all understand the difference. So the funding source of this capital fund is the general fund. So that's, yeah, so we're kind of shifting from the other discussion. But obviously, we talk a lot about the constraints of the general fund. So that's why really at the end of the process, we look at what capacity is remaining in the general fund and what of these projects can be funded, including all the other general fund capital.
Right, from other departments. that
Yes,
put theirs
there are
in.
other supplemental.
Right. And a lot of these are done in, working through facilities management and coordinating with them on what they're seeing future costs on also.
So this is the kind of side leftover wish list, right? In a way. And
These are additional needs that the departments bring to us during our budget discussions.
so, and we do this to the general fund.
Correct, there's a
Okay.
transfer out, and really the point of Fund 400 is we created this fund maybe 5 years ago, and it was because prior to that, all capital for the general fund was really only thought about in the operating budget for that particular year. So the idea of the capital fund is, we may, let's say we do a transfer of 1.8 million, but then we only end up spending, 1.5 million. Then that 300,000 stays in the capital fund, so we have a little bit, things that come up just throughout the year, capital projects that we maybe don't plan for. Or, as it grows, we can really use that funding for our identified
These are
capital plan.
one-time expenses, we've been trying to tie to one-time revenues as much as we can, like county jail money is help fund our capital.
So, our previous conversation, is there a way that we could transfer money from that fund into the 400 account?
The general fund?
Transfer money from where we have leftover monies that weren't spent, and we're going to now reallocate that money?
The highway funds?
Yes.
No.
Okay, that's restriction, we can't do that.
Correct. The general fund has the most amount of unrestricted revenue. So that's why when we say we transferred from general fund to highway or general fund to capital, it's because of the source of the revenue. Yeah. So we can't use the county option fuel tax to fund the general fund capital.
Can it be lent? Can it be lent in that direction, or is that under restriction also? Can they borrow it from us if they needed to? Somebody's gonna ask it eventually, I might as well ask it.
And is there?
I don't know why I would want to.
I don't
I'm just asking
think-
that.
For example, and I'm just saying, could we not make the argument that the fuel island replacement there for $1 million is not highway
It
oriented?
could be like an MFT expense.
Could we not be creative in that regard
Well,
and
again,
pass it through the auditors?
And I think that's back to, this kind of, I don't know if shelving is the right word, but moving things around, and we actually do try to move things around creatively within the restrictions of the funds. I don't know about lending money. I'll have to look into that. I
Well, you
would
can,
think
you
that-
can, you can lend on a in-year basis, but it's gotta be paid back before the end of the fiscal year.
Yeah, I'm not sure we should use any highway funds.
Well,
No,
Okay.
that was just an example.
Okay.
But seriously, could, I mean, this is a supplemental. So these come back in supplemental request, they're funded through the 400 account
Mhm.
or fund. Why can't we first look at those, and I'm sure staff does this, right? And you're saying, okay, well, this is certainly related to highway funds, the other account. Why can't we go ahead and account for some of these under those that are related in the highway fund?
Well,
And cover them with unspent money from the other priorities?
I think that could be a discussion of this committee, as if it says like, what's your priority of this list? You know, like, there's not gonna be $1 million in the general fund, let's just say. You know, is that something that this committee would consider paying out of RTA? But then, if you pay that out of RTA,
Something else.
something else.
But I'm talking about the reallotment of funds that are unspent.
I'll have to, what can, I don't know, you can use like county option for fuel item. I don't know, that seems like
Yeah, just
we
keep
would
in
have to
mind-
find that out.
Keep in mind, motor fuel tax funds, the two motor fuel tax funds we have are subject to the lockbox, the state constitutional amendment, right? So they need to be specifically for transportation purposes. RTA sales tax, the only caveat on that is it's either transportation or public safety.
And I agree. I agree, but I also believe that a fuel island replacement, for example, is directly associated with highway activity. You could make that tie, and I think you
Yes.
can logically do that.
Sure.
It's $1 million expenditure. You just said that we don't have $1 million worth of opportunity in 400 account, right? So why don't we find that?
Yeah, and again, we put this slide together, funding it out of the capital program, because we think of ourselves like any other department, right? Like, for example, the health department would pay for that out of their own, they would fund it under the capital program, under the general fund, right?
Right.
So we're not, could some of this be funded with our existing DOT funds? Yes, but that would have to be a decision from the board to then, that's $1 million we're not gonna have on a bridge in the future, right? It's not, it's gonna be, those are project funds, so anytime you spend something out of there for non-project stuff, projects are gonna have to be delayed or cut.
In the future, absolutely, right, in the future, I agree.
There is no free lunch, is what I'm trying to
Yeah.
say.
Well, Joe pays for lunches every once in a
2001, there's
Right,
no,
right,
those
right.
are steel tanks, right?
What?
Those are plastic tanks. So
Those plastic.
Matt's been trying to recognize for a long time.
What I wanted to say, I'm gonna table till I check, make sure I don't misspeak. But also, just as a point of clarity for you, you know, all these supplementals in these committee meetings, that is outside of the budgets you're seeing in budgets. This is an
Right.
add-on too, just making sure you know, that's what the argument is. Yeah, I have an idea, but I better do some homework first.
Right, another way of saying that, none of these costs, I didn't show any of this in earlier slides. All that other stuff did not account for this.
We talk about supplementals, probably, we'll talk about it in September, we'll compile a whole list. That's when we'll have a better idea of what's available in the general fund. And then maybe the discussion can shift to the priority of the whole list, including these and others funding sources.
These are competing with other general fund supplementals.
Yeah, for sure this year, it's gonna have to be priority based, it's gonna have to be.
Okay. What are you okay?
Oh, I'm not okay.
All right. I guess we already.
We've talked all the questions out, so that's done.
All right, so we're looking for concurrence to move forward.
Yeah, but
Next steps, what do you want to do?
well, okay, so I already know the answer, but I'm gonna throw this out here. So I've heard you say that even if we were to take full CPI and new growth, we're still $1 million short. I've already heard you say.
Yes, but that was based on, was it April?
Yeah, I mean, it could be,
I think, as we're seeing the personnel come in, specifically in the general fund, I think $1 million maybe was slightly optimistic. You know, you guys saw the sheriff's budget yesterday, which,
Wow.
and again, it's just, you know, catching up some of those union contracts, you know, that were passed last November. But now we're seeing the personnel increases.
we've become more fully staffed in the last year than we were.
Which
It's a good thing.
Yeah.
It's a good thing.
Yeah.
But we had a lot more vacancies 18 months
So
ago.
even if that's optimistic, I've heard you say several times during the presentation that transportation is one of the areas that can help alleviate the general fund and the property tax discussion.
But in order to do that, it needs to be a meaningful $282,000, I'm just doing a 3% number, $282,000 cut out of transportation, not a move sideways and borrow and take from somewhere else.
I 100% agree with that. So we have not, I'm not trying to cut you off, but we haven't had the discussion. You can't move a budget forward to the full board that hasn't had that discussion. And we haven't had that discussion. So, you know, in their thing, they had these functions provided by county board, which is what we had asked to do. What are we doing that we don't necessarily have to do? So I see 4, 5, 6 things here.
Right.
Again, these 6 things are only germane if the funding source can be tied back to property taxes.
Not just property
No.
tax.
No, like transit isn't property taxes.
Yeah, but here's my point. My point is that the focus that the county board has, and I'm not trying to judge, the focus that the county board has every single year is property taxes, right? They don't give a shit about the other millions of dollars that go from other sources. They focus on property taxes. Just being blunt, that's what the discussion always is. So if we're gonna cut something, or cut programs, or cut whatever, if the discussion isn't around how that's gonna impact property taxes, then does the board even wanna have that discussion? And if it's a program that is currently funded through some other source, whatever that is, but that source then can be replenished through property taxes, meaning you can play that, you know, like shell game, movement of shifting of reallocation of dollars, then fine, that's a worthwhile program to have the discussion, right? Because it will ultimately can impact property taxes. So if we don't have that discussion here at this committee, how do we go back to the board? Because we're all going to be sitting there, 18 members of the board are going to be sitting there going, well, what did you discuss in your committee? Well, what did you discuss in your committee? Well, how much money is your committee going to save over on property taxes?
Okay, so you open the door, talk about it.
That's it. Where is in the levy side, on the levy side, which is the 9.4 million, where is there $282,000 that can be cut and disposed of? It can't come back reoccurring, it can't borrow from another source. Where is there $282,000 in this department?
So I think
That's in the 9.4 million.
That's at the 9.4 million side. That's the affects the levy side, which is all that we're really talking about here.
So I think the discussion of this committee should be not just focus on the 9.4, but if you focus on the general fund levy and you look and you say, what is the general fund levy paying for? that maybe RTA could pay for. Sorry.
But that's how you guys work buckets and
But-
reallocation. But on our side of the fence, talking about a cut of taxes for our constituents is based on the fact of actually looking at a cut, actually looking at something that walks that down. You guys are very good at doing a whole lot with what buckets you have and the amount of money that's in those buckets. But we're down to the wire here, especially some of us with constituents, where there has to be some meaningful event, movement, sign that we are not just as a board rubber stamping this. We're not taking it by a committee and saying, okay, we'll just pass it on. Because then it jams up in the cow or in our meeting for the budget, and then it's a free-for-all at that point. Before we send something forward, like, and you brought up the sheriff's department yesterday, the only thing that I could do to justify that base budget moving forward were two things. Number one, the medical, there's not no number for that too. And number two was the net additional dollars that the sheriff's department brings in. That's outside of our realm, that net. So with that, I could justify moving that base budget first. All the supplementals, and they really want them, I couldn't justify the supplementals. And some of them are technically in need. Same thing at this department. We have to pass a budget out of here, out of this committee, that we are comfortable saying, yes, this is their base budget. Supplementals is another story. We can come back, we can find those drips in all these other buckets to do the supplementals. But the base budget that comes out of this committee today should reflect a reduction in this budget, a reduction,
If that's the consensus.
if that's the consensus.
Because sample board members in June, it was 1/3 of the board that wanted reduction.
Correct. And again, if it comes out of this thing with a third wanting the reduction and the other 2/3 not going, that can move forward, no problem.
Well, okay, but we don't have a consensus on the 18. We have.
I would rather not chase my tail trying to cut 3% if that's not where the majority of the board wants to be.
I get it, Pete, but I also feel it's a derelict of this committee if we don't come forward with options that they could potentially choose.
And that's why I proposed at Law and Government yesterday, somewhere between 1% and 3%. I can even find it my way to let it go at 1% of a reduction. Now, the 282 was my quick math off my head on 3% of this. That could be, but that's 3%. But can we come to a consensus here and move this at 0.5%, 1%? Can we move this out of committee that way? Or are we rubber stamping what we've seen today and just sending it on?
And maybe we've done the work for the.
Yeah, you could argue you've done the work when you took out 500,000.
Yeah, we already we're cutting 5% of our budget, of our levy. Right, so that's what we showed you today, was a 5% cut in our levy. More than the 3% that.
But that was a redistribution.
That's my job.
I know. Hey, thank God for you, because you do a great job. But that's a redistribution that down the road catches us again, just like the trucks.
But I want to make a comment with them, is in the past, this committee and the board has, and transportation has always taken it on the chin for the budget. Thus, we had to bail them out here, and then we also paid, or increased the fuel tax, which if we didn't do that, it was totally.
So before we end up in that exact same spot.
So my problem is sustainability.
Correct, and that's what I raised too. Because down the road, it's gonna bite us again.
That you're always gonna increase your personnel wages every year. You keep cutting this thing, and we've cut it. You keep cutting this thing. I'm not saying flat, I'm not saying cut, I'm not saying increase, but I'm saying if you make that choice to cut, you're gonna run into this wall next year. And this wall next year might not survive.
You're starting from a smaller point next.
Hence the reason I said you have to look at cuts that go away, never to return. And I don't know what that is, I don't run this department. I'm saying, is there 1 to 3% on the levy side that can go away, never to return? I remember back in that, they had the oil embargo, and they made us turn all of our thermostats down, and then the heat and the cold, and run around the cold and drive 55 for a while. That's what they did as a federal government in order to cut some of those costs. I don't know what they are here. I don't know if they're even available here. I'm just saying, robbing from Peter to pay Paul, you're gonna pay that.
Good, right?
I appreciate the concerns, and I understand where there is a strong perception on behalf of our constituents that we need to cut. And cut means that you look at the base area of budgets. And we also have to understand, though, in my mind, that our staff is not, they are very strongly professional, and they're not just proposing budgets that are filled with options of cutting quote-unquote fat. That just does not exist.
No kidding.
And I think that we have to acknowledge that. And I'm a little bit unhappy with the terminology of automatically just rubber stamping. I don't think this board rubber stamps anything at the committee level or otherwise. I don't think that we do that. I think we give thoughtful consideration, we look at all the options, we understand the need for sustainability, but we also understand there are natural economic growth factors which fall into place here that we've got to recognize. We have to look at the ability to meet our baseline costs, and that is through levies, right? That baseline cost is, as the chair has just indicated, going to continue to increase naturally. It happens in our household budgets, it happens in business budgets. That baseline is going to increase based upon the economy overall. If we think that there's something that we can cut, bottom line is it's going to be through personnel. That is our largest cost, as indicated here. So that's why I have a real concern, is that we start thinking about where we can cut. There's no place in this budget that I think that we should be reducing. I just don't think that. But if there's a commitment to cut, it means people, personnel. And that bothers me in philosophical perspective, and the reason is we do not make widgets. We don't produce anything as a unit of government. We don't produce, we serve. And so our product is service. And the only way that we can provide service is through professionals who are going to provide those services. So I really disagree with the philosophy, basically, that we can cut, and I've said this before, and I sincerely believe this as an economist, you can't cut your way out of challenging financial situation. You just can't do it. You have to balance proper management of resources with revenue. You can manage resources, sure, you can cut a little bit here, you can cut a little bit there, but with the rising costs in the economy, there's no way you can cut your way out of financial challenges. You have to look at revenues and the combination of the two. Proper management of resources and proper revenue is the only way that you're going to manage these things.
I wholeheartedly agree. All I'm doing is rearing the ugly head. I am not, and I apologize for rubber stamp. It's like when we use shell game. It's a quick euphemism for what we do to move through here. And I don't think anybody's being lazy on their job here, nor am I. And that's why I'm talking now, because my job is different than all these other great people who work in this department. My job is for the taxpayer. I work for the constituent. Nobody looks out for that because those same cost increases that are pressing upon this department are pressing upon their lives too. I can't tell you how many small businesses I've heard of who've lost workman's comp insurance, lost general insurance because of the cost of these things, and some won't even carry them anymore. This burden is all of ours to carry, and it is imperative that we take the time to open up our cupboards here and say, is there something here that is not giving us a return on our investment, on our taxpayers' dollars? Is there something here that is giving us such a poor return on that investment that we could table that or find a better way? I'm not saying you guys don't do that all the time. I'm saying I don't work here. I'm saying, is there a 1 to 3% area in the levy side that could be tempered? And if you come back and say, this is it, the only way we can do it is bucket to bucket to bucket, I'm in concurrence with moving it along. I absolutely am. But if we don't ask, if I don't ask in this committee, I have failed doing my job.
Yeah.
Because I don't work for this department.
Yeah. And I appreciate that very, very much. Two things. The first is that I do believe that our professional staff has done a great job of trying to keep these budgets thoughtful of our commentary before, as an entire board has done a great job of trying to oversight and see where they can manage resources to the best of their ability and keep costs down. I think they've done a remarkable job in that, and I appreciate that. The only place, in my mind, absolutely the only place that is open here is a huge step, and Mike has pointed this out for years, that is bridges. You know? Do we just say townships? We ain't doing it. That's a big lever to pull. I'm not sure that I'm prepared to do that because I think that, again, our interest is to serve all of the county clientele to the best of our ability. And we know that bridges are important.
But aren't we slowly pulling that lever anyway when we move these monies out of those buckets?
We're replacing it.
That's a discussion to have, and I agree with you in that regard.
I'm going to Mike's point, rather than just say, this is it, this is definitive, I'm asking the questions. Is there 1 to 3% of a revenue gain here? We open a fruit stand outside out front, or a 1 to 3% cut here, we have some superfluous items and or equipment and or things that aren't making sense as a good return on taxpayers' investment.
So I'll answer the question for you, and I hope move things forward. As a department, and it's been alluded to here, we look at this on what are our necessary expenses. I've been in this role for 24 years. We've been on what they call a maintenance budget. What does that mean? That means your 4s, 5s, and 6,000 don't increase unless the whole board approves them. That was the purpose of supplementals before. So if your overtime went up $50, you had to bring that forward before as a supplemental. There is nowhere to cut 1%, 2%, 3% with this. It's Scott, who's done a tremendous job in developing this budget, along with the rest of my executive management team. Scott listens to every one of the committee meetings in his day. And as Dr. Sager said, we take that into account. When we meet with county administration, we take that into account, what your concerns are. But there is nowhere. And if you want to say from our property tax funds, the 3 of them, we're already, as Scott has shown today, cutting $500,000, 5%, over the last 2 years. I don't think there's another department in this county that has done that. And that, if you're asking me as a department head where else to go to in the general fund, and I'm going to say the highway fund here specifically because we've already talked the other two, half my staff here is plowing roads. If you want to reduce level of service, if you want to cut overtime, that's the only place that's going to happen. Now, that's going to affect a lot of different things. And is that somewhere where you go? As a department, I don't think that's a responsible thing to do. There's one thing that we are measured a lot of times, is that's how well we respond in emergencies, not just plowing. It's when anything happens. And that's to the tremendous asset to the entire team that we have here. And so I cannot.
And that is this department's return on investment. That is mission critical. I understand that completely.
And so I'm gonna tell you, no, there's nowhere for us to cut.
So Mike, has this gone thoroughly through enough that you are confident to do the base budget the way it is with the $500,000 shift? Or do you think there's more to dig?
I am not here to pass judgment. I'm looking at the future meetings that this board's gonna have. And quite honestly, based on past experience of years, we're all gonna be having a problematic discussion time because we don't have a clear direction by the board as to what to do with the property tax levy. And these discussions are happening at every single committee. And so, am I happy? No, I'm not happy because I know what's gonna be coming down the hill. I mean, that's the reality of it. I don't need a crystal ball to forecast the discussion that the 18 of us are gonna be happening in 2 weeks, and then 4 weeks, and then, the next 2 months. I mean, there isn't a clear direction, and without a clear direction, that usually brings somewhat of a chaos, So no, I'm not happy. But I don't.
Emotions aside, nobody being happy.
Yeah.
Are you okay to move this budget as presented in its base form forward, less the supplementals?
Are you?
I am.
I am too. I believe we were here. I mean,
That's why we're here.
I've said this many times over the years. There's never been a time in public service when constituents come and say to you, golly gee, thank you for everything you've
Thanks for the
done.
low taxes.
We love everything, but, we don't need these services. So start cutting services. Nobody ever says that. It's exactly the opposite, So I just think that there are realities. We have to pay for those services. And I think that this budget is a solid, well-crafted, and total kudos to this staff for the abilities that they've had in tough times as well as better times to focus on priorities and to get the job done. So I believe this baseline budget, absent supplements, by consensus, I would say, needs to be voted.
Go ahead, Mike.
So I concur with what you're saying. I also am looking at out years. And, I feel like part of my responsibility as chair of finance is to looking out at the out years and trying to set the board on a direction that we can have sustainability going into the out years. And sometimes I never want the board to ever come back to me or themselves and have a comment about, well, hell, if I only knew that we weren't able to do anything about this, in fiscal year 27, 28, 29, you know what I mean? I don't, whether I could get hit by a bus tomorrow, I don't want future boards going, oh, that's Scally, what an asshole, he set us up for failure, I don't want that.
That ship has sailed.
They were all on the bus driving. But, it's, to me, that's part of my responsibility as chair of finance, is to make sure that we're on a sustainable path going forward, And I'm one vote out of 18, but if I at least don't draw the attention to it and at least make 18 board members aware, hey, this is the path we're going down, we can try and alter that path now, even though it may not be 100% necessary now, because we can still make things work this current, year coming up. But it's sustainability that is the issue for me.
And I get that 100% because I grapple with this exact subject. But it really comes back to where is the return? This is one department that is absolute, I said to myself the fact, okay, if you boil this thing and burn this thing all the way down to the ground, what is actually essential? We have to have law enforcement. We have to have our judicial system, and we have to have transportation. Everything else in the minimalist Mad Max world could go to hell. You could get by, you could live and survive without the rest of that in the county. That's it. Municipalities pick up more load and blah, 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 blah. So, I agree with you, looking down the road, that there are certain departments, certain places that must remain feasible, solvent, giving back the same ROI they've been giving us year over year over year. We need those. So I agree with everything you're saying, but I think we have to look at another direction. Look harder in other directions. I ask here, I'm going to ask everywhere. I'm going to ask for my 3%, 1% to 3% everywhere.
So is it fair to ask each department to take a look, to see what are we mandated to offer as a county? Or what are we doing out of, trying to help a certain area? What are we required to offer?
Yeah, I mean,
And
that's
start
what they
from,
came up with that.
and start from there. But where's the list of what we don't have to?
What are we doing beyond that
And-
mandate, is what you're saying? What are we already doing beyond that, is what you're saying? That's a
Right.
different list.
And what is that cost, and what are the ramifications if we don't offer that particular service? I know you're, typically very critical of the township, that should probably be on the list. So what's the actual cost of that? Are there any other, kind of in that realm that we aren't really required to offer? And maybe every department, for the sake of this cow that we're gonna have, needs to compile that list, and we make a decision based on that.
We aim it at you because you are the finance chair, and all roads lead to finance. That's really what it is. It's nothing personal, man.
No, I
like the bus idea.
Yeah. Well, but I admit, I take it personal because I feel like that's part of my job. So I do take it personal, and I do have emotions about it because I feel that is my responsibility. But, yes, we asked every department to come up with that list of what it is. You don't have numbers attached to your list, but they have a list, so.
And we do go through that. I was going to say that, let Ms. Bergen finish her comment, and that's, we do take a look at that, and we do that. And keep in mind, though, ours that we talk about on a lot of these that are not mandated, but our services are desired, are not property tax driven. So.
For this department.
For this department, but that's what, we have looked at that. We've come up with that list. As we said so before, you want to stop providing MC Ride? We've got how much in the budget this year?
$3 million.
$3 million, that's your savings. If you don't want to do MC Ride Connects, we bumped that up to $1 million this year, correct?
And we have to say that when the state,
Well, we don't know what's going on with that. And we can tell you, we've sat in hearings here, Pete, Scott, myself with that. One of the first questions that came up is, how much of your RTA tax do you spend on transit? You think they like hearing the answers that DuPage and Will gave? No.
But I think for many of us on this committee, we understand that. We
course you
understand the importance of that, but other board members who maybe don't watch the committee meetings or fully understand the ramifications if those services aren't offered, when we get to the cow, those questions may be asked. So, do we have something put together to make this process a little smoother as, we go from committee to committee?
The unfortunate reality with with us at least, this department, is that the only thing that's gonna impact the property tax levy, if we didn't do it, is our bridges, right? Like, matching and bridge fund are the places where this body told us, you're not gonna do township bridges anymore. Then there will be some savings to that, and we could apply those savings to the matching and bridge levy going forward. I mean, other than that, there is no other place that's gonna impact the property tax levy. Transit, great, we could get rid of that, save $3 million, but that's RTA sales tax. We would spend that on a new road project somewhere, or a bridge project, for example, right? It's not
And that
gonna
is
be-
one of the ways that we can get some of our RTA money back into the county is matching those dollars that we spend.
And going back to one thing Mr. Runkle said earlier about revenue, so Joe mentioned we would cut, for example, if we needed to, overtime for our maintenance workers, right? On the revenue side, did anyone find it kind of coincidental that we increased permit fees today? I think that was because of what we heard as you went through this budget process about thinking differently about how to increase revenues. So we were gonna do it anyways, but it happened today for a reason. Because we wanted to show that we're pulling out all the stops here. We're trying to find every lever we can pull.
And based on inflation, you could have gone higher than you did. It could have been. This is actually a very great, small step forward. It's all good. But the questions that we're asking here, we need to encourage our other board members to be doing the same thing in their committees. Don't want to use rubbers. That they're just not saying, oh, that looks nice and moving through. They need to look under the rocks also. I think that works. Go ahead.
I appreciate, Mike, your comments, because I think that you have verbalized the inherent challenge for all elected officials. And that is that we make decisions today, what is the best decision for today, and yet what is the impact of that decision in the future. So that truly is, and I've said this before, the most difficult thing for elected officials to understand and to embrace in their considerations. And so it's a big responsibility. And the fact that you're finance chair, that is absolutely a burden on your shoulders. I agree. But we still have to make decisions, right? We still have to move forward, and we do that based upon the very best information that we have today, and we consider the impact of that decision in the future. But that's hard. I don't think that the general public appreciates or understands the challenge of that responsibility of each elected official. So I appreciate your verbalization and your agony, I'm going to say, in that regard. And it is something that we all need to consider as we go through this budget process, as always. And so I think that it's paramount for us to be cognizant of that, but we still have to make a decision. We don't have the luxury ever of just pushing away from the desk and say, that's too hard. I'm not going to do it. We don't have that luxury. So I truly believe that we have to be comfortable with what we know today. And I believe that this professional staff, I believe that the approaches that we have taken recently over the past few years in terms of our budgeting and the funds as they exist for this particular service function is incredibly well done, and I believe we just need to come to concurrence and say, move this budget forward. That's what I'm asking us to do.
Okay, so, heard from everybody on that side of the table, but I haven't heard from you two yet. You got anything you want to put into this?
Guys have crossed your T's and dotted your I's. It's not a whole lot.
I gotta be honest, I'm still kind of learning, so I'm just taking it in right now. So,
Okay.
yeah, I don't want to say something stupid, I'm just trying to.
Nothing stupid, yeah, because
break
I
it all
say
in.
stupid stuff all the time.
I like what Tracy is saying, show us what that, just, because we're gonna be asking, we're gonna be talking amongst each other, we're gonna be sharing things. So maybe, I would say move it forward, but give us some more information of what that, you know, the levy portion of, and if there is something that we can cut or skinny or whatever, or just say everything looks great, or, you know, transportation, let's move on.
And before we finish this up here, I kind of want to say something, you know, it's been a long time, some say too long to be on the board, but Mike remembers, he was here the whole time in the these battles. We came in and immediately it was a cut 10, you know, cut 10% out of our levy. Stuff never to be recaptured again, because once you don't levy that number for 3 years, it's gone. And you get caught in the CPI, and some of us always preach, you gotta have, if you're gonna do this, it's gotta be sustainable. Well, we've passed the point of sustainability now. And future board members have come in and they've got their marching orders from the constituents, cut our taxes, cut our taxes. Well, the past boards, what Mike's point is this board has to think about 10 years down the road, what it's gonna bring. And if this board takes that deep, any deep cuts, I'm not even for, to be honest with you, I'm not even for, this time, we gave it last year, the 500,000 to help. I didn't even like giving the 500,000 this year, but I agree with it. We've got to give it someplace to help the rest of the county here. Because right now, we've kind of run this department, to you guys' credit, that this department runs on a shoestring, staff shoestring. You don't have people falling over themselves, you know, looking for something to do here. And that. So when you're talking cuts, which the main cut is going to come from employees at some point. And I don't consider this department staff overpaid. I mean, you know, you look at mechanics, you look at some of these people, what they go making in other sectors, they make a hell of a lot more money. Engineers, the same way. So to try to even put a freeze on that, I see that's going to be difficult in the future, because then we're going to fight staffing problems again. Yeah, that just doesn't say an open checkbook. I'm not trying to say it that way. What I'm saying is that's a struggle we have to look at 2 or 3 years down the road here, as this, you know, a 2 or 3% increase each year compounds. And so I don't see us, this department, giving any more. I mean, this department in the last 10 years has been black. And done a fantastic job. And you know, with the staff to get things done and services, I mean, I challenge any other county to show the quality of service that this county gives on transportation. So I guess my point long-term, or is for the newer members, even the last couple of years, it's becoming more and more difficult to come up even with a flat, which is what I oppose. It's becoming more and more difficult. And this department, I don't think we would anymore. We gave it. And I'm not sure the other departments, health department, or the other ones, I don't know that answer. But that's if it's coming someplace, it can't come from this one. Go ahead,
I'm just gonna make a blunt comment, I guess. You know, each of us have chosen the committees that we're on because we have a passion for whatever that committee is, right? Or we have a knowledge or an understanding or whatever the situation is. And I guess it's difficult because I feel like every committee member, board member that's on a committee, has that passion for that committee. So they're gonna say the same exact thing that you said, and rightfully so, because typically speaking, our elected officials and our department heads have done an awesome job with whatever resources they've been given to manage their departments as best they can. And, you know, management has done a great job of holding them accountable for what they're doing and how they're doing it. And so the dichotomy between what goes on at committee level and then ultimately when we get to a full board level don't match, because passions of each committee member, you know, comes to fruition as far as what we look at.
But that's the beauty of the system.
That's the balance of the system.
That's the balance, that's the way it's supposed to be, exactly that way.
Yeah.
And so maybe.
You're all going your way, Mike, it wouldn't be any fun.
But maybe that's, you know, that's what makes the process that we're going through right now a good process, a solid process, a stable process. And it's okay for us to have differences of opinion. I believe that the majority are ultimately going to come up with the right decision. I think that we know that we've all done, and I mean staff, I don't mean we have, but I think staff has done just a remarkable job across the county, not just here in this department only, but across the county. And we applaud that, and we continue to support that, and simultaneously support the services that we know as a county we're supposed to be providing to our concerners. And we'll come up with that majority position. And I think we'll be okay.
And I think the attempt, you can see through the different committees and the resolutions coming forward, reclassification of positions, lowering wages and all of that, and doing everything they can do, you know, each one of these departments. So with that, I'm tell you where I'm at, I'm ready to move it forward. And if you guys are all in concurrence, if you think we've talked about it enough here. Anything else to say, Mike? Last word.
No.
I know we don't have a lot to say when it comes to the board floor. So I would, if no objection, let's move it forward. We need to vote on that, we're voting. Just a concurrence. Just a concurrence. Okay.
Without beating the horse.
All right.
Thanks, staff.
Thank you all for your great conversation today.
So now,
And I do want to write to Dr. Sauger, thank you, Dad. Thank you to Scott and all of the leadership team of putting this together. This was a very challenging, just as every year is.
let's get on to staff recognition.
Please. All right, Scott.
We don't have to go to work.
We lost it because half the group that was here was staff that was with this. So, Drew, in your new role, let's go ahead and introduce yourself and introduce David, please.
Well, I'll quick on myself. I'm Drew Duffin. I was the former planning liaison, and Joe saw fit to elevate me to the position of transportation planning manager, and with the vacancy in planning liaison role, that has now been filled by David here. So we'd like to welcome David to the planning section as our new planning liaison, and he'll be taking over the management of our council of mayors and our SCPL program, which is helping fund municipal transportation projects. David lives in Elgin with his wife Lima. He comes to the county from the Moline area, where he worked as a planner for the Metropolitan Planning Committee, within the Quad Cities. In his spare time, David enjoys looking for new recipes and looking for new trails to work off those meals with a runner. So please help me welcome David.
Yeah.
I'm funded from the federal side.
All right, Scott.
And I won't make them come up here, but I'll have them stand up at least.
Oh, make them come up so they.
All right, come on.
Yeah.
So Jennifer Emiliano and Sam Pearson have been with us for many years now in our accounting section. Carrie and I had a staff member from DOT actually transition over to Carrie over at the Finance Administration Department, which left some opportunities to promote from within. Jennifer is now our Fiscal Operations Manager, so she's kind of oversees our finance section up front here. Samantha Pearson was promoted to accounting assistant 3, so she's taken on a new role, a higher level role here at the organization. And then we've actually, at interviews, we're going to hopefully hire two replacements for the lower level positions here in the accounting section. So I just wanted to say congratulations to Jenny and Sam, and many more years to come.
You guys do have the floor. Do you want to say anything? They're both a little shy with that.
I can't even say that.
Thank you. That is it for new business, sir.
Any old business?
Given the length of the meeting, we will not have any staff report updates, so no new or old business.
Okay. We do have need for executive session
Yes.
on land acquisition
Land acquisition and meeting minutes.
and meeting minutes.
Yep.
Do I have a motion from Mr. Sager to go into land acquisition, executive session for land acquisition and meeting minutes? And Mr. Kaminsky second. All those in favor?
Aye.
have to come back in the regular session to approve the changing of the minutes, the releasing of the minutes to the.
And go back in open session.
In open session.
Yep. All right.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right.
Now,
Thanks, Mark.
That's Mark.
I got the changeover, I want we're ready for the changeover. You ready?
You ready?
Okay.
Wow.
That was quick. We're ready to go back into open session.
Go ahead, get into,
Motion to go into open session. Mr. Kaminsky,
Second.
Officer Thomas seconds it. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so now we have a quorum. Do I have a motion on the minutes that we talked about?
I make a motion to move the
I'll
minutes
second.
to the state's attorney's office for review.
A second.
Yeah, Bergen seconds that. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, motion carries.
Mr.
Anybody, what?
it isn't on here, it shows the next meeting where we're gonna have it, but it doesn't have suggestions for topics.
You have something you want to talk about next meeting?
Yeah, I would.
Okay,
Go for it.
yeah.
I know that we, as a committee, signed off that we want to have 0 deaths and fatalities in the county. The state has a resolution ordinance when there is a lost loved one that they put up a memorial. That's only on the state highways. Here in the county, we've had a bloodbath in the last couple of months, and it's been gaining. Some of these memorials are starting to get a little out of hand. I've heard a little birdie say that we have something similar to what the state has in a filing cabinet. I would like, if we can, to have a county ordinance code resolution on what these memorials can be sized with, who has them, who takes care of them, because they're getting out there, a lot of them, and it won't be long before that's a distraction to somebody driving down, or they plant a palm tree that covers the street, you know. Just a thought if we can bring it up.
Is that something our department does, or is that PUD?
No, that would be us.
Yes?
For our county roads, it would only apply to our
Our
county.
county roads. All right, we'll throw it on the agenda to discuss it. Not possible action, how's that? Give us some information.
Discussion.
Thanks.
I am also gonna put on the agenda for the township roads to rip that Band-Aid off, of township bridges to rip that Band-Aid off and start talking about it. And it's time to have that discussion.
Yeah, that thing that's.
So we're gonna have a lot of public comment.
You did a great job of that.
Next few meetings.
I will be working with the state fair, so I'll be participating in
At the next meeting?
next week.
Okay. Stay fair last this year.
Because I will decline something.
Oh, we'll get to the point. Okay. All right, and that's it. Anybody else or anything?
I'll do a motion to adjourn at 11:03.
Mr. Skeller moves, Mr. Kunkel seconds. All those in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned.
That was almost like a finance meeting.
I know.
That was 45 minutes and you would have done right then.
We're doing good.